strength versus flexibility, and the need for balance. An often overlooked and neglected aspect of fitness and physical well-being is the need for a balance between strength and flexibility. Now, most people tend to opt for either one or the other. They engage in strength training, which focuses on muscular size and strength, or gaining amazing flexibility. Now, both of these objectives have their obvious benefits. Strength builds stability, flexibility builds better and more fluid mobility. However, both of these objectives also have a negative side which can manifest itself over time when taken to an extreme, and when you're only training either one or the other of these elements. Now, in the case of the size and strength camp, there is a loss of flexibility and in some cases many cases in fact, reduced muscular range of motion. In particularly mass gain advocates who pursue size and mass, they pack on so much muscle that they become muscle bound and cannot fully straighten their limbs in some cases. Often these men increase their strength while neglecting to take the time to patiently increase the strength in their ligaments and tendons, which often leads to tendinitis and other joint problems further down the road. All of these things have got to be considered, and you've got to be training all of these things. And often when they become aware of the condition, they've developed shoulder pain, joint pain, etc., it's often too late, as this is extremely difficult to reverse. Now, over many years, this can also lead to the early onset of age-related mobility decline or a lack of flexibility. This begins to make itself apparent from the late 30s onwards, and sometimes even earlier in the case of enthusiastic bodybuilders. Now, following this path tends to lead, in many cases, to shortened exercise longevity through injuries. In those pursuing the ultimate flexibility, on the other hand, often seen in practitioners of yoga, then taken to the opposite extreme, this can manifest itself into a condition known as being hypermobile, a condition that causes joints to easily move beyond their normal range of motion, and as a result of loose, weak and damaged connective tissue, for example the tendons, there is no doubt that the practice of yoga and flexibility is a very effective way of increasing mobility and range of motion, and these elements are very important when it comes to remaining active as we get older, and will no doubt help to increase exercise longevity. But pushing the limits of what are considered to be normal ranges of motion for yoga practice, in order to demonstrate advanced stretches, some of these Instagram yoga poses no doubt include a degree of hypermobility for these movements to even be possible in the first place. And this can lead to weak joints as you get older. Either path taken to an extreme can leave the physical body out of balance and also cause states of persistent injuries, which can often lead to ceasing of physical activities into older age. Now, for strength training and the development of strong muscles capable of exerting powerful force, the muscles tend to be short and squat and have increased strength and stability, but at the expense of a loss of flexibility and range of motion. Now, for all-out flexibility, the muscles tend to be longer, more flexible, have a greater range of motion at the expense of having a lack of strength and stability, and certainly considerably less exertion, power, force generation potential. Now, it certainly seems that aiming for one of these objectives while neglecting the other can often lead to problems and injuries. Most people tend to focus on strength, increasing muscle mass, or increasing cardiovascular performance when they think of training and beginning an exercise program. For these people, it's important to also consider flexibility, as flexibility is one of the foundations of physical health. A loss of flexibility and normally functioning ranges of motion within the body, which is often accompanied by pain and stiffness in later years, correlates to loss of vitality and the onset of age-related mobility decline. All the ingredients towards becoming old and losing your mobility have their origins, the root cause happens many decades earlier with your regular practices. This is why you have to be, training all elements, as it were. In the case of avid yoga practitioners, often they tend to focus on all-out flexibility while neglecting completely stability and muscular strength. Increased flexibility without a corresponding increase in muscular strength and stability of some kind can result in instability in the joints and an increased risk of injuries. Over time, this can ultimately lead to muscular atrophy, or sarcopenia as its medical term, and this also increases the risk of suffering with age-related mobility decline. And in the case of these people, the muscular degeneration also tends to lead to pain and stiffness as the muscles lack the strength to be able to move. And ironically, after pursuing ultimate flexibility, it ultimately results in a loss of flexibility, further down the line. So while the two approaches have their obvious benefits and advantages, they both also come with a potential dark side. Now, for many, the idea of strength and flexibility seem to be opposed to each other, and in a way it's kind of true. Now, anyone who's ever focused on either their strength or their flexibility will have noticed the other side diminishing a bit in capability. Anyone with a martial arts background knows perfectly well that a balance between the two is the ideal that is often sought after. Now, to train with this objective seems to be the best approach to maintaining our mobility and activity levels for longer, decreasing the risk of problems or injuries later on, and to be most effective at delaying or preventing age-related mobility decline. Strength is the ability to activate muscle fibers to generate force in a specific way. Put simply, your muscles can utilize force. But of course, strength has many different forms depending on the desired outcome. Get my words out, why don't I? Lifting weights is a form of strength, but so are stamina and endurance, or the development of punching or kicking power in combat sports and martial arts. There is no one definition to define strength. You can also have mental strength. You're able to go and live in difficult circumstances, for example. The strength you are exerting depends on the objective use of that strength and the kind of strength that you want to develop. Now, flexibility is a little more complicated, but it also has like different aims and forms. Flexibility is the ability of a joint or joints to access an unrestricted range of motion. Flexibility also correlates to the length of muscles across the joints that induce flexible motion. Now we have dynamic flexibility, which involves flexibility of the joints during a dynamic movement. For example, kicking, a high kick to the head in martial arts is an example of dynamic flexibility. And it's important if you're during movement heavy activities, such as combat sports, martial arts, basketball, just to name a few. Dynamic movements and flexibility in those dynamic movements is pretty important. Static flexibility focuses on flexibility within the muscles of a particular joint, utilizing the force to engage in static stretching movements, for example, yoga poses. It's not difficult to see that the definitions of strength and flexibility do not seem to mix well with each other. When training for strength, muscles tend to feel tight, which directly inhibits range of motion. Stretching to improve range of motion doesn't usually seem to help very much when increasing strength and muscular stability directly. All it does is it helps you to increase flexibility and range of motion. Strength usually comes as a result of the muscles being challenged to produce or increase force. However, stretching doesn't tend to produce force in the same way that strength training does. But in truth, you can be both flexible and strong at the same time. The two are both fundamental ingredients when it comes to creating a base of fitness and physical ability. Combining the two will no doubt increase exercise longevity and movement longevity. Now, these two elements do not necessarily need to be diametrically opposed as they seem to be. Examples: gymnasts, martial artists have successfully incorporated the two to get the most out of their respective sports. They have the strength, the stability, and they've got the flexibility and the movement capability. The key to increasing strength and flexibility at the same time without one tending to sacrifice the other is to incorporate both together with a carefully thought out and executed training plan. The benefits of having both strength and flexibility are indisputable. Improved flexibility and strength are linked with slower age-related bone and muscle loss, as well as improved muscular function in day-to-day tasks and also in athletic or sporting movements. And this will certainly correlate to a much lower risk of injury and the delaying of age-related mobility decline. Now, optimum mobility will improve life quality, so it's well worth bringing this to your attention. Subscribe to this channel and follow this series for more.